Payback. My wife screamed and her two lovers stared at me W/angry eyes because I just destroyed their lives. Reddit, I've been a long-time user of this social media platform, but never did I imagine I'd find myself making a post here. I'm not usually one to share personal details online. I prefer to lurk and observe. However, I'm in a situation where I can't confide in anyone without risking it getting out, yet I desperately need an outlet to vent before I lose my mind. So here I am, turning to Reddit for some anonymous ranting. First things first, names have been changed to protect privacy and keep me incognito. I'll be using my real account for transparency, but won't link this post to my identity. My name is John, a 30-year-old guy. My wife, let's call her Isabel, is 28 years old. We met back in college, sparked by a chance encounter at a friend's party where we hit it off immediately. Fast forward through the years, and we've been happily married for about a year. I always believed that Isabel and I had a strong bond despite her occasional struggles. I prided myself on being romantic, attentive, and always there for her. From planning special date nights to ensuring she felt cared for, I thought our relationship was built on a solid foundation of love and trust. Isabel's behavior had always been a bit wild, even from the time I first met her in college. First of all, back then in college, she had a tendency to avoid settling down, despite her claims of wanting something serious. Those early days of us dating were literally marked by multiple instances of her cheating on me, which caused me a great deal of pain and confusion. Strangely, I forgave her each time, maybe because I was stupidly swayed by her apologies and promises of change. She convinced me that she had turned a new leaf and was committed to our relationship, and for a while I believed her. Over time, I genuinely thought those episodes were behind us. However, I am now blindsided by the discovery that she has been cheating on me again. It is a shocking revelation that has utterly shattered my trust and has left me questioning everything about our relationship. Aside from her infidelity, Isabel also had a habit of avoiding responsibilities. She was the type who always wanted someone else to do things for her. This was pretty clear from our college days when I would often end up doing her projects to ensure she didn't fail. Fast forward to now, and I find myself not only paying the bills but also shouldering most of the household chores. Whenever I confront her about this ugly behavior of hers, it's like navigating a maze of deflections, excuses, and outright lies. She would apologize, promise to change, and then go back to her old ways shortly after. Our work situation was another layer of frustration. I have a demanding job that requires me to be constantly on call. It's demanding, but also rewarding. On the other hand, Isabel's job as a sales assistant in a clothing store is flexible and allows her to choose her hours. While her salary isn't huge, the job grants her plenty of free time, which she often spends on herself. I had urged her to seek a better paying job, but she refused because she said she needed personal time. She also refused to contribute financially to our household, and she would always argue that it was a man's responsibility to pay the bills. Which is fine and all, but if she believed it was a man's responsibility to pay the bills, then why wasn't she handling the household chores? To make matters worse, Isabel's spending habits were reckless. She would spend her entire salary on herself, and she always showed little regard for saving or contributing to our shared expenses. Yet she insisted on a joint account, and when she was broke, she would dip into my earnings without any hesitation. When I would complain about this and would tell her that I didn't like it, she would brush it off. She would claim that as a couple, what was mine was also hers. She would forget that she never contributed to anything in the house. Isabel's selfishness was also a recurring problem in our relationship, and it showed up in different ways that always left me feeling frustrated and powerless. She could be ruthless and heartless when it came to getting what she wanted, even if it meant hurting others or breaking trust. I saw her betray business partners and prioritize her gains over everything else. Whenever I tried to talk to her about her selfish behavior, she'd turn things around on me. She'd say I wasn't being supportive enough as her husband and that her actions were justified. It made me feel guilty for questioning her. I used to make excuses for her selfishness, blaming it on her tough upbringing and poverty. Isabel's family had struggled financially and had to rely on food stamps for survival. While I, on the other hand, I had grown up in a wealthy family and graduated without any debt thanks to my parents' support. Up until I graduated from college, my parents paid all my bills. This difference always caused tension, and she'd mock me for being financially privileged and would call me names. Her complaints about my family's support stopped only after I threatened to end our relationship, but she never really apologized or acknowledged how hurtful her words were. Instead, she'd shift the blame back to me, saying I couldn't understand her struggles and that I was insecure. Looking back now, I see that I made a mistake by letting her behavior slide because of her past. That was wrong, I know. and she also took advantage of it. It allowed her to avoid taking responsibility for her actions and made me feel like my concerns didn't matter. Whenever I would raise concerns about her attitude, she would turn the table on me and accuse me of not knowing what it was like to grow up poor. She said the reason why I wasn't selfish and self-centered like her was because I had grown up wealthy, and that when someone grows up poor like her, they learn to only care about themselves because no other person matters. Of course, I didn't agree with her, but there was only so much I could do. I had tried my best, but she wouldn't listen to me. Isabel's treatment of my family was another real headache in our relationship. She wasn't just rude, she was downright mean sometimes. Whenever she wanted something or knew gifts were coming, she'd turn on the charm, but the rest of the time she'd make snarky comments about our lifestyle and upbringing. When my parents offered to buy us a house, they had one condition. Isabel's name couldn't be on the deed. They'd seen how she acted and didn't trust her with shared ownership. I fought with them because I stupidly thought that I and Isabel's love was real lol, but they stood their ground. They also insisted on a prenup before funding our wedding. Isabel threw a fit, saying we'd never need it because we'd never split. But my parents weren't budging, and eventually she gave in. She wanted a huge destination wedding, and if my parents weren't the one paying, I refused to fund it as it would cost a lot of money. Looking back, I owe my parents a big thank you. Their tough stance will protect me from a lot of potential headaches down the road, especially legally. Isabel's behavior with my family was a big warning sign and a giant red flag that I should have taken more seriously. When I first met Michael and Jason, Isabel's affair partners, I had no clue about their true relationship. Isabel introduced them as her longtime friends who had just returned to town. They seemed a bit off, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Isabel mentioned they had grown up together, which I found endearing and cute. However, my perception changed drastically when I discovered the truth. They were all sleeping with each other, basically a throuple. Isabel's behavior went from weird to downright suspicious. It was such a huge red flag. She went from barely lifting a finger around the house to being glued to her phone all day and night. It got so bad that even my sleep was disrupted because of her constant phone use. I'm a light sleeper, so every laugh or beep from her phone woke me up. What really got me was how protective she became of her phone. It was like she had something to hide. She wouldn't leave it in the same room as me anymore, changed her passwords frequently, and acted like she was scared I'd see something. One incident that stands out vividly in my memory. I was in the kitchen just finishing up with the dishes when I noticed she had left her phone charging in our bedroom. I finished the dishes and decided to go to the room and change. As I headed towards the room, she rushed past me and unplugged her phone before I could even enter. It was as if she was hiding something, and her behavior became even more suspicious. It was sketchy, to say the least. When I asked her about it, she gave me this flimsy excuse about chatting with her friends, Michael and Jason. I bought it at first, thinking they were just friends catching up and telling myself not to overthink it. Boy, was I wrong. This was just the tip of the iceberg. The second red flag was when I started noticing how Michael and Jason acted around my wife. They were like vultures circling prey, always hanging around her and being overly familiar. Even when I wasn't home, she would invite them over, which seemed odd given my limited interaction with them. I always had a gut feeling that something was off about them, but since Isabel was so chummy with them, I tried to brush it off. Their behavior was beyond friendly. It was downright flirtatious. They would touch her casually, laugh a bit too intimately, and just exude this vibe that made me uncomfortable. It wasn't just once or twice. They started coming over frequently, and each time their behavior became more and more inappropriate. When I tried to talk to Isabel about it, she brushed me off and would use the insecure excuse. She accused me of being insecure and not understanding their friendship. It felt like a slap in the face, as if my concerns were meaningless compared to her bond with them. It was clear something fishy was going on, but I hadn't put my finger to it just yet. The tipping point for me was when I started checking my wife's location. We'd always had each other's locations turned on for safety reasons, but I never felt the need to constantly monitor her whereabouts. It felt invasive to me, and I trusted her enough not to pry into her daily movements. However, with everything going on with Michael and Jason, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I began to notice a pattern in her location history. Her supposed working hours were flexible due to the nature of her job, but there was a consistent trend. She was always at home during the time she was supposed to be at work. At first, I tried to rationalize it. I thought that she might have swapped shifts with colleagues or adjusted her hours. However, as days passed, the pieces didn't add up. I felt very conflicted about confronting her because it felt like an invasion of her privacy. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore these glaring inconsistencies. I decided to quietly observe for a few days and keep a close eye on her location. What I discovered confirmed my suspicions. She wasn't going to work. She was at home when I was away, and shockingly, she was also home when I was in the house. So when was she actually going to work? It was pretty apparent that something wasn't right. I'm not one to jump into fights without solid proof, so I decided to take things into my own hands and find out what was really going on. Even though I didn't want to invade her privacy, I felt like I had no other choice but to figure out the truth. I drove to her workplace during her supposed work hours. Of course, I checked her location to make sure I wasn't jumping to conclusions. Turns out she was still at home when she should have been at work. When I got to her workplace, I acted like a regular customer, just browsing their stuff. I chatted with one of her coworkers, trying to casually ask about my wife's recent shifts. What they told me hit me like a ton of bricks. She had quit her job out of the blue without even giving proper notice. I couldn't believe it. She hadn't mentioned a word about leaving her job. Back at home, I tried to play it cool. I even made small talk before bringing up her job. She acted like everything was normal, saying work was fine and complaining about some coworker drama. But it was all fake because she wasn't even going to work. I couldn't wrap my head around how she could lie so easily. Finally, I couldn't hold back anymore. I told her I had swung by her workplace with lunch, only to find out she wasn't there. The look on her face said it all. She never expected me to catch on to her lies so quickly. That was the first thing that shattered any sense of normalcy in our relationship. I stared back at her for a solid 30 seconds. My mind was literally racing with disbelief and anger. It was like she was trying to cook up a good excuse, but she just couldn't come up with anything that would make sense. Finally, she started crying. Those crocodile tears that I had seen too many times before. I could see through her act now. There was no genuine remorse in her eyes, none at all. She told me that she had been feeling overwhelmed at work and that she decided to quit abruptly. What the hell? I couldn't wrap my head around why she would make such a drastic decision without even discussing it with me. When I asked her why she had never talked to me about it, her response was even more infuriating. She said she hid it from me because she knew I would never encourage her to quit her job, and she didn't want to disappoint me. Her explanation sounded like a load of crap, but I had no concrete evidence to challenge her. It was like a nagging feeling at the back of my mind, telling me that something wasn't right. That's when I made the decision to install cameras in our house without telling her. Looking back, I realized that should have been my first move. In fact, if I had done that in the first fucking place, the first time my mind told me something was wrong, then this story of mine wouldn't be this long. But no, instead I chose to believe and trust my cheating wife. I bought the cameras and waited for the right moment when she was out getting groceries, which is a very rare occurrence as I usually handled those errands. I installed the cameras discreetly, and I genuinely thought nothing would come of it. But when I finally checked the footage after about a week, I finally discovered the gut-wrenching truth. There she was, my wife in our matrimonial bed, betraying me with her so-called friends. That was a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have ever imagined. I couldn't believe my eyes as I watched the footage. There she was, my wife in our matrimonial bed with her friends. The two of them, right there with her. There was even footage of them mocking me, laughing at me, saying I was oblivious and obtuse and that I was completely unaware of the shit they had going on. The footage kept rolling, showing them coming over to the house multiple times when I wasn't around, sneaking around behind my back, betraying my trust in the worst possible way. The sheer volume of footage I had gathered in just a week was overwhelming. It was like a punch to the gut. It made me feel sick to my stomach and on the verge of fainting. I was in a very dark place that day. My mind was consumed by thoughts of betrayal and deception. I even struggled to focus on work. I kept zoning out. All my thoughts were consumed by the realization that my wife had been cheating on me with her supposed friends all along. I should have seen the signs, should have noticed the subtle cues that something was off, but I was blinded by trust and love. Now that trust had been shattered, and the love I once felt had turned into seething anger. I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of betrayal, not just from my wife, but also from her so-called friends who had pretended to be just friends, and they had always been nice and polite to me all while mocking me behind my back. When I got home, I was still feeling betrayed and angry. My wife was bustling around, getting ready to leave. She seemed unusually cheerful. She mentioned she had even made dinner, which is a really rare occurrence, so that caught me off guard. It was as if she was trying too hard to appear normal, to mask whatever guilt she might be feeling. She told me she was going out with her friends, which was a common occurrence lately. I used to encourage her outings. I was happy that she was becoming more social and outgoing since her friends returned to town. But that was before I found out that she was sleeping with her friends behind my back. As she talked more and more about their plans for the night, I genuinely struggled to contain my rage. I wanted to confront her, to scream and lash out at her for her betrayal, but I held back. I knew that showing my anger now wouldn't achieve anything. I wanted more than just an outburst. I wanted payback. I wanted justice. So I put on a facade of calmness. I told her it was nice she was spending time with her friends and that I would retire to bed early. She accepted it without suspicion, and as soon as she left, I literally got in bed and am now writing this rant post on Reddit. I need advice and guidance on how to navigate this crazy situation. I can't risk discussing it with anyone I know. I'm scared that it might leak out and complicate things further. So here I am, seeking wisdom and helpful advice from internet strangers. I genuinely hope there's a way I can navigate this whole shit show. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a few hours since I made this post and it's almost midnight now. I'm lying in bed next to my wife, who's fast asleep while I write this update. I'm honestly blown away by the response this post has received. The support and love from everyone here have been incredible, and I want to express my gratitude for all the positive comments, DMs, and advice I've received. The sheer volume of responses has been overwhelming in a good way. I've received hundreds of messages and comments, and I'm doing my best to read through and respond to each one. I want to apologize to those I haven't gotten to yet. I assure you I'll reply as soon as I can because your input means a lot to me. I do have a request, though. I kindly ask that no one shares this story outside of Reddit, whether on TikTok, YouTube, or any other platform. I just want to keep this within the Reddit community, as I genuinely do not want this reaching a larger audience outside of Reddit. Now let's dive into some of the feedback and suggestions I've received. Many of you pointed out that I might have made some foolish decisions, and I agree. Love can indeed cloud our judgment and lead us to do things we wouldn't normally do. I appreciate the reality check, though, LOL. A common piece of advice was to seek legal counsel and consider the prenup. I'm definitely following through with that. It's a necessary step given the circumstances. I'm also grateful for my parents' foresight in suggesting the prenup, and I plan to thank them once I've sorted things out with my wife. Another suggestion was to check my wife's phone, which I'll be doing soon. She's right here next to me, sound asleep, so I'll take this opportunity to investigate. Many of you also recommended checking social media accounts for her affair partners, Michael and Jason, to see if they're in relationships themselves. I'll be looking into that as well. There were also a lot of questions asking me if my wife's affair partners were in relationships. That is genuinely a question that I have never ever asked, to be honest. Like I've said before, they always give me a bad vibe, so I kind of distance myself from them. I genuinely do not know anything about them, not even where they live. I've asked my wife before, but she dodged the question and didn't answer. So all I pretty much know is that they are my wife's friends from way back and that they left the town after high school but recently came back. That is literally all I know, but since a lot of you asked about it and raised concerns about it, and like a lot of you said, it would be a very asshole move of me to not tell their partners that they are literally cheating on them with my wife. I will be investigating a little more so as to gather more information. I'll check my wife's Facebook, maybe see if I can get access to Michael and Jason's Facebook or even their Instagram, and see if they are in any sort of relationship on their own. I'll be sure to come back and update you all on any developments. Once again, thank you for the overwhelming support and advice. It's been a wild ride, but I'm grateful for this community's kindness and willingness to help. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a couple of days since my last update, and a lot has happened since then. I promised to keep you all in the loop, so here's everything that's unfolded. Firstly, many of you raised concerns about the joint accounts and the potential financial risk. I hadn't thought about that aspect before, but now I'm looking into securing my money. One step I'm considering is transferring all funds from our joint account back into my personal account. I know my wife won't be happy about it, but at this point, screw her. I couldn't care less about her opinion. As for checking my wife's phone, let's just say cheaters are often not as smart as they think they are. I guess my wife felt like she was too smart to ever be suspected or caught. Her phone was practically a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. I found out a couple of things too. One, she had been having an emotional affair with Michael and Jason long before they returned to town. She said shit like she loved them, she missed them, and that she couldn't wait to see them when they came to town, and no, she wasn't saying all these in a friendly way. Two, she also shared intimate details about our relationship and even exchanged nudes with them. She sent them multiple nudes and they sent multiple nudes back to her. Third, and the most shocking, both Michael and Jason were in committed relationships. Michael had a girlfriend and Jason was engaged to be married next year. They even had a cringeworthy group chat named the Throuple, which basically just consists of the three of them. It's unbelievable how brazen and crazy they were. Moving on to Facebook, I wanted to contact Michael and Jason's partners to expose the truth. I gathered screenshots of the chat evidence and then dove into their social media profiles. Jason's fiancée was easy to find since his relationship status and tags clearly identified her. Michael's situation was a bit trickier as he wasn't as open about his relationship on Facebook. However, after some digging, I identified his girlfriend through her constant and consistent comments on his posts. I reached out to both of them, but it's too early to expect a response since it's only been a few hours. I feel a mix of emotions. I feel anger at my wife and her affair partners, sympathy for their unsuspecting partners, and a sense of justice in exposing this whole shit show. I'll keep you all updated on any developments, especially if Michael and Jason's girlfriends get back to me. Thanks again for all your support and advice. Update. Hey Reddit, quick update here. Michael and Jason's partners responded to my messages. Initially, they were skeptical and found the situation sketchy, which is understandable. So I suggested meeting up for coffee to show them all the evidence I had. I could have easily sent everything to them on the phone, but I believe certain news is better delivered face-to-face. This morning, I quietly got ready for work and made arrangements to meet Michael and Jason's partners for lunch. Also, remember how I mentioned securing money in our joint account? Well, I took action and cleared everything out and transferred it to my personal account. My wife was not happy about it, to say the least. She launched into a tirade, accused me of financial abuse. It was crazy to hear those words from her, especially since she has refused to get a job. She cried, pleaded, and tried every trick in the book to guilt-trip me into reversing my decision. But I stood my ground. I couldn't let her fake emotional outbursts sway me. She then tried multiple times to bring up the topic, but I always refused to engage. I told her plainly to drop it, and eventually she did. Well, I'll update you all on how the lunch with Michael and Jason's partners was when I return. If I don't update immediately, I'll share any major developments as they happen. Thanks for following along with this crazy journey of mine. Update. Hey Reddit, just got back home, haven't even had dinner yet, but I wanted to update you guys first. Let's call Michael and Jason's partners Vivian and Lily for privacy. So I met up with Vivian and Lily for lunch, and it was eye-opening. First off, they were incredibly nice. I couldn't help but wonder why horrible people like Jason and Michael always seem to end up with such good partners. Why don't horrible people end up with other horrible people? It's frustrating how they mistreat the good ones. During our conversation, I shared the red flags I noticed early on and asked if they had seen any. They admitted to noticing many red flags, but had been brushed off by their partners whenever they raised concerns. They said that Michael and Jason would always turn the tables on them and call them insecure if they dared voice their complaint. That was incredibly surprising and eye-opening for me because that was the same my wife did. She would call you insecure so you could never say a word. One thing that wasn't surprising was hearing that their partners were always at our house. I had been checking the security cameras constantly and noticed their visits. In fact, they were over so often that I wondered if they even had jobs. Turns out they didn't. Vivian and Lily confirmed they couldn't hold down jobs, which was why they moved back to this town where things are more affordable. It's true. This town offers a lower cost of living, making it attractive for many. Our conversation was emotional. There were tears, even from me. While planning revenge on my wife, I had neglected to process the pain. Sharing that vulnerability with them allowed me to release some of that hurt. We ended up ordering a ton of food, partly as a way to say screw you to our partners. I insisted on paying for lunch because they were such great company. We decided to stay in touch beyond this whole shit show. We found solace in each other's company, and the shared feeling of being cheated on by horrible, lying partners. It was helpful in a way, knowing that we weren't alone in this mess. So that's the gist of it. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a minute. Sorry for the disappearance. I wanted to update you all properly instead of bits and pieces. So here's what's been going on. I finally managed to get my wife out of the house, which was a journey in itself. I had planned to expose her during a family dinner from her side of the family, where they all gather occasionally. It's something that happens from my wife's side of the family, where they all come together and have dinner once in a while. I patiently waited for this opportunity because I wanted to reveal her betrayal in front of everyone, hoping they wouldn't take her side once they knew what she had done, and they would be so angry at all no one would even let her move in with them once I kicked her out. Brutal and cruel? Yes, but did she deserve it? Absolutely. In the meantime, I got back in touch with my best friends, whom I had distanced myself from after finding out about the cheating. I hadn't really been in touch with them for a while now because I kind of closed up and retreated into my shell. I was very sad, to be honest. I was angry because I really wanted revenge, so I kind of pushed my friends away a little. But despite all that, after I explained the situation and asked for their help in packing my wife's stuff and putting it on the porch while I was at the family dinner, they were supportive, thankfully. When the family dinner arrived, we went through the motions, eating, chatting, playing games until the moment of truth. I announced to everyone that my wife and I were getting a divorce, which shocked everyone, including my wife. I told everyone about how she had been cheating on me for weeks with her so-called friends. She tried to deny it, but I didn't hold back. I airdropped explicit videos of her with her friends to everyone's phones to prove my point. I made it clear that I was done with her lies and betrayal, took the car, left her stranded, and went home. My friends had already done what I asked, and I secured the house and ignored her attempts to get in later that night. The next morning, her things were gone from the porch and she had left, leaving behind a broken glass from one of my cars. I noticed a lot of comments asking for an update on Michael and Jason. To be honest, I don't really know what's happening with them, but I plan to reach out to Vivian and Lily to get an update. We all agreed to keep in touch, but we've all been a bit busy and haven't communicated in a while. So that's the update for now. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been a while, but I wanted to give you all an update on what's been happening. Firstly, I've been focusing on self-care, which is why I haven't updated as frequently. Not much has changed dramatically, except that my wife has been served with divorce papers, so she'll be gearing up for court. I've got a good legal team, and we're confident in court thanks to the prenup. It's ironic that the prenup includes clauses about cheating and waiting periods before she can claim anything. Since we've only been married a year, these clauses work in my favor. I also reached out to Vivian and Lily as promised. They both kicked their cheating partners to the curb. Lily had a bit of a tough time breaking off her engagement with Jason, but thankfully they hadn't made too many concrete plans yet, so it wasn't as messy. Vivian, on the other hand, had a straightforward breakup with Michael and got him out of her apartment. As for my wife and me, we're not communicating. In legal cases, it's important not to block the other person to document messages as evidence, so I just ignore her calls and texts. She's been going through a roller coaster of emotions, from begging for forgiveness to calling me names. One minute she says to please take her back and that it was a mistake, which is crazy because you don't sleep with someone by mistake. And the next minute she says I'm a heartless psychopath who hid the fact that I knew about her cheating for weeks. I won't update about the court proceedings as it's not appropriate to discuss ongoing cases, but once everything is finalized, I'll come back here with an update for you all. Update. Hey Reddit, it's been quite a journey and I'm here with what might be my final update. Months have passed since my last post and I'm relieved to share that the court proceedings went smoothly thanks to the prenup. My wife ended up with nothing, and that's one of the happiest moments for me right now. Right after the day I kicked her out. Seeing her face in court when she realized she was getting nothing, not even alimony, was a crazy mix of emotions. I was happy about the outcome, but also emotional realizing how blind I had been to the red flags because of love. It's crazy to see this chapter come to a close, especially when I thought she was the one I would spend the rest of my life with. I couldn't break down in front of her, so I held it together. Her reaction in the courtroom was chaotic. She was too scared to say anything in the courtroom, so after we came out, she started going off about the judge and me. But I decided to block her out of my life completely. In fact, I blocked her before I even walked out of the building. I've been focusing heavily on self-care and self-love this year. I'm not planning to date anytime soon until I'm in a better place mentally. I'm also going to therapy soon, and I've already booked my first ever session. I've grown closer to Vivian and Lily, and our bond has strengthened without the toxic influences in our lives. This might be my final update here. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who offered advice, commented, messaged me, and followed this journey. It's been a wild ride, and I might take a break or even delete this account. Thank you all for everything, and I hope none of you ever have to go through what I did.